So we're now ready to assemble the dollhouse. So I'm just gonna tell you how to get everything ready for it first. So I've laid out some paper here on my coffee table just to protect the surface of the table a bit. This is like melamine, so the glue probably won't stick to that anyway, and like it'll be easy enough to clean up, but just if you're concerned about whatever surface you're working on, it's good to lay out some paper. You can use the paper that your dollhouse kit was wrapped in. So I've laid that out. Now the bottle of glue that came with your kit, I think you'll need to like poke a hole in the top of it to open it up. So go ahead and do that before you start, and then just check to make sure the glue is coming out easy enough. Make sure the hole is big enough that you cut. So then after you've done that, you'll need your tape. I'm using blue painter's tape. This is kind of the masking tape that I always use. There are actually differences in quality of masking tape. Like sometimes if you have like a really cheap masking tape or a really old masking tape, like when you pull it off the roll, it'll rip into little pieces and it's hard to get a good piece out of it, or it'll rip like while you're trying to pull it over something. So I mean, just check to make sure your tape is good and working properly before we start. So you have your tape. You'll need something to spread glue into the grooves of your house. I usually use, you could use a popsicle stick or any kind of like thin, stiff enough object. I usually use like pieces of a business card or like a clothing tag, like some kind of thin cardboard, and I just like cut little strips off it. And I've cut a bunch of strips here. I have a few ready to go. I also recommend that you have like a damp cloth on hand, just so if you get glue on your hands, it doesn't end up getting all over everything else. And if you get glue on your table, you can wipe it up. You should also have like a dry cloth somewhere, just like a little dry cloth to dust off the pieces before we start, because if there's dust on the parts, the tape might not stick to it. And then get your house parts. So we're going to start with like the main part of the house. So the walls, we have our front wall, and I'm going to have that laid down in front of me here with the inside up. You have your side walls, 2 of those, your back piece, and the floors. So what we're going to do first is just dry fit. So we're going to put the house together with no glue just to make sure everything fits together. So the thickness of this plywood is not totally consistent, so there are parts that are thicker than others, and some of them are a pretty tight fit. So we're going to just check the sides first and see that they go together easily. This one's pretty tight, so like if there's, before I packed up all the houses, I checked them all to make sure they fit together, so they should all fit together. But like say this side, there was like quite a bit of resistance getting it in there, so I'm just going to switch them around and see if it fits a little better the other way. So that one goes in, and yeah, so it fits a little better this way. So I'm going to make note of that and make sure I put these on the same side. This one's a little tight. If it is a little tight, you can just kind of push down on it and like gently wiggle it and wiggle it into place. When we're putting it together, the most important thing is that the grooves for the floors line up. Another thing that we're going to do while the house is put together here, before it's glued up, is just tape off the inside corners. So when we're gluing it together, if we have a good amount of glue in there, it's normal for a bit of glue to squeeze out into the corners, and then you have to clear it off. And so it can be hard to clean it off, especially in inside corners. And so just to avoid needing to clean it off, we're going to just tape the inside corners. So you can tape the front and back walls with the house assembled like this. Oh, another thing that is useful to have right now that I should have mentioned earlier is a utility knife. It's not necessary, like if you have masking tape you can just rip the tape, but it's a little easier if you have a knife to cut it. You can just tape off these inside corners in the top and bottom, and be careful that you're not blocking the floor grooves with tape. Another way that you can deal with glue squeeze out is while it's wet, you can use your damp cloth to just kind of wipe it off of the corners, and be careful not to spread it around to where there isn't glue already. But since I already have my house painted on the inside here, I don't know what that's going to do to it if I start wiping it with a damp cloth, how that's going to affect the paint. So I'd rather not do that, so I'm just going to tape it off. And you're going to have to deal with glue squeeze out on the outside of the house too, probably, a little bit. So you can wipe it off with a cloth. It's a little easier to do that on the outside. Or another thing you can do is just wait for the glue to set a little bit, like when it's not dry when it's not wet anymore, but it's not hard yet. So it'll be kind of gelled. So if you touch it and it's dry to the touch, but still just a bit squishy, then you can kind of pull it off, or you can take your knife and sort of lift it off the surface. And again, the timing of that can be kind of tricky, because it might be 20 or 30 minutes, but it sort of depends on the temperature and humidity of where you are and how thick the piece of glue is. If you do it too soon, you could end up just spreading the glue around more. And then if you wait too long until when it's hard, then you end up having to kind of chip the glue off, and that can damage the surface a little bit. So taping it off is an easy way to just avoid needing to do that. I'm not going to bother taping off the grooves where the floors fit in, because the main joint that's going to hold the house together is these corners. So when we glue up the corners, we're going to put glue in there, and we're going to kind of spread it to fill up so that it's on the sides of the groove too, and a little bit on this face, just a little bit on the edge here. And that's the main thing that's going to hold the house together. When we glue in the floors, we're just going to put in a little thin line of glue and kind of just spread it into the bottom a little bit maybe. So it's a little bit of extra stability, but it's not as much glue, and so it shouldn't be a problem of there shouldn't be a lot of glue squishing out of there. But if you are concerned about that possibility, you can tape along the floor grooves too. So now I already have the side walls taped off, and that's a bit easier. You don't have to have the house together while you're doing that, because the tape just goes right along this edge. And I did the top too for when we glue the roof on. And you can do that on the back wall too. You do it the same way. You just you can put this back piece down, then put the side walls in, and then tape it off in the corner there. The house is pretty much ready to be glued up now, but we're just going to check it again. We're just going to check the fit of it again. I think I mentioned in the intro that if you've finished your pieces before assembling the house, it can cause the pieces to warp a little bit, especially the MDF. The MDF can kind of swell, and it might curve a little bit, like mine here. This floor piece is a little bit domed like that. So, but they will flex, you should still be able to fit it in, but we'll just put it all in place just to see how it goes together completely before we put it together with glue. So So I just have to like bend this floor a little bit to make it fit in. But yeah, that goes in. And the bottom piece. So we're just going to put all the walls and floors together to make sure everything fits right, and just to get it set up, just to have a little practice run before we start putting glue in. So I'll have to like bend this a little bit to get into that groove too, but it goes in. This piece is all put together tight enough. And then I'll put on my back piece. This is a good way too to just test to make sure that we don't have any tape in the way of the floor grooves. Okay, yeah, so that all goes together fine. Now I'm going to take these pieces and set them aside. I'm going to keep this side on this side over here, just to make sure I know which side goes on which side of the front wall. Before we glue it up, I'm going to get my tape pieces ready. So I'm going to put like, I don't know, 3 pieces of tape maybe on each corner. So I'm just going to rip off a bunch of pieces and kind of stick them to the edges of the table. It'll just be easier while we're gluing everything up. Don't want to get you too stressed out about it, but glue-ups are kind of stressful. They're just a little time sensitive. Like you want to make sure you have all your stuff ready to go and that you're doing things right the first time, and like you don't want to put glue into a groove here and then like not be able to find something, and so you're running around looking for it for a few minutes, because like especially if something is a tight fit already to begin with, like it might be hard to get it in if the glue is like started to gel a little bit. So it's better to just have everything ready to go and make sure you have like a good, undisturbed few minutes to get this done properly. Okay, so I've ripped off all these tape pieces here, so they're ready to go. I have my glue here. I have my little spreader tools. These like little strips of business card. So now we can start gluing it up. So we're going to glue in one side first, then the floors, then the other side, then the back. So we're going to start by putting the glue into the one side groove. Now you've checked your pieces to see which side goes in to which side. I would suggest if there was one side that was harder to get in, start with that side, because it'll be even harder once you have to line it up with the floors and everything. So this side was like a little bit stiffer for me, so I'm going to start over here. I'm going to put the glue in to this side. Now for the amount of glue, start with less. Here, I'll just lift this up for you. I've just put like a thin little line of glue in there, and then I'm going to spread it around. So once it's spread, what I was told in cabinet making school is it should look like the thickness of like spilled milk. Like you shouldn't have like a ton of glue like squishing out of there when it's all put together. Like it's normal, like I said, to have a little bit of squeeze out, but it shouldn't be like, there shouldn't be like glue running out of there. So I could actually use a little more than what I had there. So just spread it into the bottom of the groove and onto the sides of the groove. And you could also let a little bit kind of get up just on top of the corners of the groove. just because that's another part where the sidewalls will be in contact with this piece, and so it's just something to, it's just an extra glue surface. It will be a little stronger if there's glue there too. So then I'm also going to put a little bit of glue just in the first sidewall here. Just a thin line of glue in this floor groove. I'm not going to be as thorough about spreading it around. I'm just going to spread it a little bit into on the bottom of it, just so that it doesn't like drip down when I put the side in here. So I'm going to put this in and make sure the floor grooves line up. It's best to watch and make sure that the grooves line up like before you have it all the way in, because it can be hard to move it like once it's in there. Just jiggling this. This was my stiff side, so it's like a little bit of resistance going in there. I'm just gonna like lean on it a bit and jiggle it to make sure it goes in there, but like don't move it too much because you could like snap the side of that wall piece off. Okay, so that's good. Then I'm going to just put a thin line in the grooves in the front wall here, too. And I'm going to put the floor pieces in. Oops. Okay. Be careful not to do that because I just ended up getting glue on my front wall here. It's okay. I'll deal with that in a minute. I'm just going to wipe this with my cloth here. The floor in. Oh, I just noticed I forgot to put glue in the lower groove of the sidewall here. So I'll just do that. And I'll put that floor in. Okay. So now I'm actually going to do the floor grooves on this one first this time. So just a little thin line in the top one and in the bottom. So again, I'll just bring this up closer to show you what I have there. Just a thin little line. Then I'm going to put the glue in this groove. spread it around before I put the wall piece in. Okay, now I'm going to put the sidewall in. I find the easiest way to line up the sidewall is, the best way to show you here, is I'll put it like near the bottom and put the floor grooves in first. So to get the floor grooves lined up in it here near the bottom, like near the front wall here, and then kind of slide it down until you find the groove in the front wall. And then okay, I think that's in. Yeah. So again, just try to push kind of straight down on it, and you can jiggle it a little bit. I had to like bend this front wall to, or top floor to get it in the groove a little bit. Okay. I'm just gonna set this aside here, and then you're gonna take your back piece and you're gonna put glue in these grooves. Well, I guess in all the grooves in the back piece. So the top and bottom grooves that the floors go into, again, just a thin little line there. And then a little more glue in the sides. And then spread it in there. Okay, I think that's ready to go. So you can get your house piece here and take your back piece and sort of, I'll line it up on the bottom and get both pieces into the grooves, and then there. Okay. See, I have some glue squeezing out here on the outside. I'm just going to wipe that with my damp cloth here. I'm just going to lean on it a bit to make sure everything's tight together. I'm going to take my tape while leaning on it here, and I'm just going to pull it down tight and tape it to the side here. I mean, normally I would be doing this with the clamps. Like ideally you would have clamps on this, but I assume most people don't have like clamps wide enough to do that, so we're just going to use tape for it. Same thing for the other side. Put a piece of tape on there, and while leaning on it, just pull it down and tape it on. Carefully pick this up and watch to make sure that there's no glue that dripped down that you're going to set your house down in. and sort of flip it over so that it's on the back. And same thing, you can kind of lean on it while pulling tape down on there. When you're leaning on it, make sure you're pushing straight down and not like to the side or anything, because that could break parts of the house. Okay, there. So we could just leave this like that. Actually, I'll just set it up right here. Now, the glue that came with your kit is this here, DuraPro Carpenter's glue. So what it says on here is, let's see, clamp time 25 to 60 minutes and drying time 6 to 8 hours. So you're going to want to leave this for about an hour before you really move it around a lot or do any more work on it. And then, like, say if you have like a kid who's going to be playing with this, maybe don't let them play with it today. You know, wait until like tomorrow or something, or at least 6 to 8 hours. So now that this is all together, the next thing that we're going to do is put on the roof.